Okay, so this is going to be our next project. It's going to be rebuilding a 58mm 1.4 f1.4 lens for my Beseler Super D camera. And the problem with this lens, as we saw in an earlier video, is that one of the leaves on the aperture shutter has come loose. And this camera will be doing quite a few videos on this because I've got to work on rebuild this lens that's on it here, which is a 100mm lens. It has a slow aperture on it. There's oil on the shutters, and that needs cleaned off. Plus, the film counter doesn't operate. It operates, but it doesn't reset when you open the camera back. And I think there was something else that needs done on it. Actually, I think that's it. But the shutter and everything works fine, so that we don't have to worry about. But anyway, back to the lens. The first thing you want to do when you're rebuilding a lens, you take the caps off. Now this I've already started to take apart, and normally with a ring like this that is that has the name of the lens engraved on it. It doesn't have, now one of the things, sorry, jumping back and forth, but one of the tool that you're going to need if you're rebuilding a lens, an essential tool, is something similar to this. It's a adjustable spanner, and on the one side it has just 2 straight pins, and on the other side it has 2 flats, like almost like flat screwdrivers. So that we'll be using to take the lens apart. But normally you'd remove the front of the lens, you'd put this in the little keyways that are in there, but a lens like this, as I was saying, doesn't have the slots. So what you would normally have is it's a chunk of silicone rubber that fits over the lens, and you push it down and turn it to remove the piece. Well, those are usually about 10-15 bucks each, and you need a separate one for each different diameter lens that you are working on. So I'd need one for this one for this one, and for whatever other lens I have. So what I ended up doing is I cut out a chunk of wood that's the right size, hollowed it out, and smoothed it out, sanded it, and I used one of those jar lid openers, and I laid it over the top of the lens, pushed down, and this ring came out fairly easily. So let's just remove the ring the rest of the way here. Now, one thing that you want to avoid doing if you can help it is to disassemble the helicals for the focusing of the lens, because they have to be lined up in a specific way, and unless you mark them carefully somehow, it'll be very difficult to get those back to the way they're supposed to be. Now, once you have this front ring removed, you should be able to just pop the lens assembly out of the housing. Should be able to. Or no, you shouldn't be able to. Some lenses you can, this particular one you can't. There's another small retaining ring, a very thin retaining ring, and this is where we'll use our spanner and side with the pins, put it in the key slots, and carefully turn it. You want to make sure, now this isn't, being that it's inside the lens and hidden by the front ring, it's not as important to be careful if you slip, but again, you don't want to strip the ring, and of course you do not want to scratch the glass. And once it's loose, it normally comes out fairly easily. And I think that's not quite out all the way yet. There we go. And the lens assembly should just pop out of the housing like this. And here's our ring that we just removed, the retaining ring. And we'll set that off to the side along with that ring. And this is the optical assembly of the lens. There's also a small brass spacer ring right here that we're going to want to remove so we don't lose it. And here we go. Now, here's the actuators for the aperture leaves. So what we're going to have to do is remove the optics from the lens, which in this case they just unscrew. And we want to be careful because since one of the aperture leaves is loose, then there should be a pin in here somewhere, and we do not want to lose that pin because we're going to need it to repair the aperture. Now we're going to remove the second optic set. Unscrew that as well. And we have the aperture assembly in the housing. Now let's see if we can carefully look in here and find this pin. Okay, so I'm not sure how this is possible, but I don't seem to be able to find the little pin. I don't know if at some point in time it migrated out of the lens or it fell out while I was just taking the lens apart, so I'm going to have to search for that. But anyway, we'll continue with the disassembly here now. There's a small little, well, not small, it's a large little spring clip, large, little, whatever you want to call it. You just want to take a fine pick and just pop that clip out. And tweezers may help at this point, because it's not held in by much tension, but you want to have something that you're able to actually grip it with. Okay. So now there's the circlip. And we should be able to remove the aperture assembly now. And you want to be very careful not to move or to bend any of the shutters, as they are very thin, either aluminum or steel on the edge to hold them in place. So, and the one leaf that is missing the pin looks like it's bent a little bit around where the pin would go. So what we're going to end up doing with this is simply reassembling it, and it will function only as a fully wide open lens. As much as I really don't want to do that, I don't really have much of a choice at this point, because for this lens I'm not going to be able to find replacement leaves anymore because the company's out of business. So at least doing it this way, I'll be able to use it with an adapter on my digital camera, and I'll still be able to use it on the film camera as well. I just won't have the option to stop down the metering whenever. I'll just have to speed up the shutter speed, and that's what are the limits that I'll have to work with. But we'll be right back, and we'll show a video. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clean the lens elements and make sure that they're spot free, because I've been taking it apart and touching it, and this is an old lens anyway, so there is a slight bit of haze on the elements. So we'll get that nice and clean, and then we'll reassemble the lens. So stay tuned for part 2, and thanks for watching.